Good afternoon and a very warm welcome indeed to this afternoon's iOB business webinar. Now, we're going to be talking about something very, very interesting today. Okay, and we're going to cover that with you in just a second. So if this is your first time joining us, a very warm welcome indeed. It's a pleasure to have you here. And for those of you familiar faces joining us, once again, thank you. And it's a pleasure to see you again. So if this is one of the first webinars that you've been on with us, an iOB business webinar, here's how they run. So we do a brief introduction with myself. My name's Ben. I'm the resident business coach here at iOB Business. Pleasure to meet you. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run into a webinar that's going to last for around about 15 to 20 minutes or so. And then at the end, we're going to dive onto a Q&A session. Okay, so important to note, if you do have any questions for me throughout today's webinar, you're more than welcome to ask them. Okay, there's a little gray Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. It should be somewhere in the middle. And you're more than welcome to ask questions at any point throughout today's webinar. You can ask them about marketing, digital marketing, business, or indeed the webinar itself. So please do feel free. Now, one final point just before we kick off, whilst I get us set up, what we are going to do as well is we are going to give you a moment between each topic to make sure that you have enough time to take down any notes, anything you would like to write down, any information from the slides today. Okay, so I can just see we've got a couple more people joining us now. Very warm welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, perfect. So we have the topic up on screen at the moment. I'm going to go ahead and switch off the video so that you can focus on the presentation screen. Okay, so right before we kick off, welcome to those that are just joining. If you could please let me know if you can hear my voice okay, and if you can see the screen okay. And if we're all good to go, then we will kick off with today's presentation. All right, so what we're going to be talking about, what unsuccessful startups are doing wrong and the mistakes to avoid. All right, so, okay, perfect. Clarification. Thank you so much indeed. All right, so you can hear me okay. You can see the screen okay. Oh, we'll go back there. So today's topic, what unsuccessful startups are doing wrong. Now, this is invaluable information when it comes to launching a business in today's world, okay? We're talking bricks and mortar stores, we're talking online businesses, and specifically today, we're talking digital agencies, okay? So I've been a business coach for a while. I've worked with lots of digital agencies, and we're very, very familiar with this space as a whole, as a team. So there's so much information that we have to share with you today, okay? Particularly what we want to cover the most is the mistakes that we have seen that we can show you so that you can avoid them. All right, so you're presented today as myself. My name is Ben. I'm a professional business coach. What I do is I specialize in working with small businesses and helping them achieve stability and growth. Okay, this is what I get to do every single day, and I'm truly blessed, and it's a pleasure to be on here presenting this topic with you today. Okay, so today's session, we're going to cover three things as always. Number one, we're going to discuss heading in too fast. Okay, core primary mistake of startup businesses, they dive in way too quickly. Okay, we're going to talk about what that means in a moment. Number two, we're going to discuss the lack of education and training. Okay, you'll hear us say time and time again, education is key, training is key. If you do not have these things, you are going to fall behind. And finally, we're going to discuss making decisions with insufficient information. Okay, you would be shocked if I told you how often I'd seen this as a coach. All right, so let's get kicked off today with topic number one. Okay, heading in too fast. All right, first things first. One of the most common mistakes startup businesses are making right now is diving in with 2 feet, okay? Now, I'm sure that over time you have heard the expression, diving in with 2 feet, okay? So to simplify what that means, if you're diving in with 2 feet, you're not thinking an awful lot, you probably haven't planned it too much, and you just went for it, okay? Now, we love ambition, we love desire, we love goal setting, we love objective setting. What we don't love is diving into something without preparation and planning, okay? So if you've ever heard the phrase as well, dipping a toe in the water, okay? You're testing the temperature of the water before you jump in with 2 feet, all right? Imagine yourself standing next to a pool, you dive in with 2 feet, it's done, it's too late. By the time you dove in, it's already done, okay? You're in the pool. However, you dip a toe in, you're testing the water, you're seeing what it feels like, you're seeing if it's too hot, seeing if it's too cold. You're understanding the situation of the pool before you jump in, okay? Now, this is a wonderful metaphor to use because it makes it very visually easy to understand. The same logic applies to startup businesses. You don't want to dive in with 2 feet. You want to test what works. You want to analyze your market. You want to check that there is a demand for the products and services that you wish to offer. You want to make sure that you have a good idea of who your client base could be, how much you could charge them, and how that would structure your business accordingly. Only when you have done all of these things and more, do you now have the capability to dive in with all the knowledge and all the education that you need. All right. So let's cover a little bit about what heading in too quickly can cause. Okay. It doesn't allow time for analysis. Okay. So I say this over and over and over. Whenever you're looking to make any kind of major decision, or even small decisions at that, you need to make sure that you have analyzed and understood the situation. Okay, think of this in any context, in any decision that you make in your life, personal life or business. Would you just make it at the click of a finger without thinking about it? Okay, probably not. So the same rule allows here. Do not allow time, does not allow time for analysis. Okay, if you dive in too quickly, you're cutting yourself off. You're not allowing yourself time to have a proper look around and have a proper detailed look at what it is that you're about to do. Okay. It does not allow for enough time to repair mistakes. Okay. So one of the biggest things that we do as startups is we live and we learn. Okay. So there's a very common phrase that I love, and I believe it was Henry Ford that said it first, or something of this context. It says a mistake is only a mistake if you do not learn from it. Okay. Now, when you dive in with 2 feet, okay, now by diving in with 2 feet, let's use this in a business context. Let's say that we launch overnight, we set up advertising campaigns the next day, we're just throwing a bunch of money at it, we haven't really thought about it, we just decided that we're going to go for it, and the whole thing is done within 48 hours, okay? Now, when I say that this does not allow enough time to repair mistakes, specifically what I mean is that mistakes will happen. It's nature, it's part of business, it's part of human nature, it's part of our personal lives. All of us are guilty of making mistakes to some extent on any given day, situation, time, scenario, okay? However, it's only a mistake, once again, if you don't learn from it. Now, by diving in with 2 feet, you have not given yourself enough time to repair and therefore learn from the mistake, okay? If you're in too deep, you're in too deep. So let's use an example here, okay? Let's say that you're looking at throwing up an advertising campaign, you want it live by tomorrow, and you dump £10,000 in on the first day. Okay, now it's near impossible to do this in some situations, but as a metaphor, it works very well. Now, let's say that the advertising campaign is wrong, it's incorrect, it's not going to work. Okay, and you've just dropped £10,000, which is your entire startup budget, into the advertising campaign. Poof, gone. Okay, so what you've done here is you've not allowed yourself time to repair any mistakes. Okay, however, let's say that you started the campaign with £100. Okay, this is a meager percentage of your overall startup budget. Now, let's say that the same scenario applies. The advertising is still wrong, the targeting's all wrong, the copy's all wrong, everything about it is wrong, but you still have £9,900 to spend after you have corrected the mistake. Okay, you give yourself time, you take an analytical and targeted approach. You understand that mistakes will happen. So you do not throw all of your eggs into one basket to start off with. You take it step by step and you learn gradually, okay? Now, the final thing that heading in too quickly can do is it can impact your ideal market negatively if you make the wrong offer, okay? So let's just say, hypothetically, I could put 10 perfect customers for your business into a room. Let's say you walk into that room and you offer them something completely irrelevant. None of them take it. 10 out of 10 people say, no, that's not for me. You walk back out the room having not signed any new clients, having had no new business. Okay. And let's say the next day you go back in, you've had a think and you say, oh, well, they didn't like that. So I'm going to come back in with an offer that I think they will like. You come back into the room, you present the same offer. Now, what's happened at this point? Okay. You have lost all credibility. They saw that you were offering something different yesterday. They've realized that it's inconsistent, and now they don't feel like they can trust you. So even if they like the new offer, even if they like something that you're talking about now, they're going to find it a lot more difficult to trust you. So maybe you'll get 1 out of the 10, but you have essentially jaded the other 9 people because they have seen what happened yesterday. Now, on a much broader scale, the same thing can happen on an online audience via Facebook, via Google, whatever, if a targeted consumer or prospective consumer has seen you offer something wrong or different yesterday, and they see your advert again today, they'll be asking why you changed tack so quickly. Okay. So what's the moral of the story here? Moral of the story, make sure that you know what you want to say, how you want to say it, and why it benefits the consumer before you do it. Okay. Otherwise, it looks messy, it looks inconsistent, and we lose all credibility with the people that may have once bought from us. Now, take that same room of 10 people. If you go in with the right offer the first time because you've given it full thought and analysis, you're going to have a much higher chance to maybe get 7 or 8 of those people. Okay. It's an extreme metaphor, but it's very, very relevant. So we're going to take a brief pause now. Go ahead and ask any questions that you might have for me. And feel free to take some notes. I'm going to leave that full slide up for you there so you can go ahead and write down anything you'd like to write. And I'll be right back with you. All right, perfect. So hopefully you've had a moment now to write down any notes that you have and ask any questions. I'm moving on to topic number 2. Okay, mistakes to avoid: lack of education and training. All right, so remember what we're talking about here, the traits that unsuccessful startups display. Okay, now you're here listening to this presentation today because you have an ambition to run a startup business and you want to see what's happening now and what you can avoid. Okay, we want you to be a successful startup. Okay, so make sure that you're taking any notes that you need to take because this next slide is going to be valuable. Okay, lack of education can lead to mistakes with lead generation. Okay, now lead generation in the broader context, if this is a new term for you, essentially means generating interest for people that may be interested in working with our business. Okay, lead generation is essentially an accumulation of different people who would like to maybe, perhaps one day work with your business, pay for the services that you offer. Okay, in a nutshell. Now, lead generation, of course, runs much deeper than this. Okay, we're looking at analyzing target markets. We're looking at setting up the correct campaigns. We're looking at bringing those people. We're looking at sales meetings, sales conversion. Okay, all of these different things. Now, what can a lack of education cause? Okay, it can lead to mistakes, first and foremost, with lead generation. Now, the one thing I can tell you with absolute certainty is that lead generation is one of the core principles of business. If you do not know how to generate the correct type of lead for your business, you will struggle. It's something that can absolutely be done. It's absolutely possible to develop strong systems and campaigns that bring the right type of people to your business. However, a lack of education can lead to mistakes. Maybe you haven't had a proper read into the type of market that would be most valuable for your business. Maybe you don't know specifically what this market would like, what they could benefit from, what their desires are, what their pain points are. Maybe you don't know what your unique selling points are. Maybe you haven't isolated this yet. Okay. These are all different things that have to be thought about. Now, lead generation runs much deeper, and we're going to cover this as we go throughout the slide today. But the first point, lack of education can lead to mistakes with lead generation. Okay. Now, we say this because we need to hammer home the point. Education and training is everything when it comes to business. Not only if you want to stay ahead, but if you want to run a successful business. You will not find a single successful business leader who ever has said training isn't important, education isn't important. Okay, it's fundamentally crucial to businesses. Okay, lack of education can lead to mistakes with client work. Okay, now we're getting a little bit more detrimental here. You're working for a client, it could be SEO, it could be paid ads, it could be website development, it could be food ordering platforms, it could be software, it could be anything. Okay, if you have a lack of education, you can bring mistakes into client work that shouldn't be there. Okay, now we're saying this very, very clearly because it's so important. If you have gotten to the point where you have correctly carried out your lead generation, you have correctly completed sales conversion, sales meetings, you have brought this client on board and they're now paying you money, you will not be getting paid that money for very long if the work with the client is not going well. Okay, now again, this is very to the point because it's very, very important. Lack of education can lead to mistakes with client work. the one place when you have worked with a client that you don't want to make a mistake is in the physical work that you're doing with them, okay? Verbal mistakes, errors during meetings, okay? These can all be forgiven, as it were, okay? Quote unquote. But when it comes to actual work that's being carried out, we cannot make mistakes, okay? Mistakes can be costly. So let's say you're building a website and they launch that website and there's something wrong on the website and it's not working, okay? Now, let's just say that a consumer can't click on a certain page because a function is broken, all right? And maybe they've plowed a lot of money into this website, a lot of money into the paid campaigns that go behind it. And when it actually comes to it, the consumer can't click on something on the website because it's not been built properly, okay? It's just a random example, but it's one that will hopefully highlight the importance of making sure that you know what you're doing, okay? So lack of education can lead to mistakes with client work. If you make mistakes with client work, that opens us up to all kinds of things, okay? So one core rule, as much as everything that we've just said, if you're offering something as a business, make 100% certain that you know exactly what you're doing, okay? Because if you don't, you do leave yourself susceptible to things that you wouldn't otherwise have to face, okay? Like client complaints, trouble, financial difficulty, all these different things, okay? Now, lack of education can disrupt potentially fruitful working relationships, okay? Now, working relationships, you'll find that as you develop your startup and you begin to turn it into more of an established business, you will find that long-term clients who you love working with, who love working with you, will discuss various items with you over the duration of your time together, okay? Now, that could be that maybe you started off just on consultation, and maybe this has snowballed into paid advertising work, which is then snowballed into SEO work, which is then snowballed into blog writing, okay? If you work well with a client, you can always be assured that they are much more likely to offer you additional work in different ways, okay? This varies client to client, but you will find that if the client loves working with you, they'll be much more open to the idea of expanding your work together, okay? However, a lack of education, a lack of training, it could disrupt a potentially fruitful working relationship. Why? Because if they ask you something and you don't know the answer, but you have claimed to or shown to or whatever in the past, it may begin to disrupt your credibility just a little bit, okay? Potentially fruitful working relationships, imagine this is a hypothetical racetrack, okay? Now, at the end of the racetrack, there's 100 gold coins waiting for us to get there, okay? It's a wonderful metaphor again. So where we are at the end of the racetrack, okay, and this money's waiting there to be taken, okay? But because of the lack of education and training, you don't know how to move along that racetrack. And if you never move along the racetrack, you're never getting the money at the end, okay? They'll say, no, you can't run the race, all right? Now, the same theory applies in business. There is money to be made in lots of different ways in lots of different areas. If somebody is offering you something that you can't fulfill, transparency is always key. Say to them, I'd love to. Unfortunately, it's not something in our wheelhouse. The biggest problem you will face is if you say, I can do it, and then you can't do it, okay? Now, what will happen here is that there'll be a breach of trust, a breach of respect with the client, okay? And ultimately, it could disrupt that otherwise fruitful working relationship. So just make sure that you're making the right decisions and that you have the right education for your niche, okay? Gaining thorough knowledge may allow you to make better offers to your prospective clients and deliver a higher quality of work, okay? What I can't emphasize enough is the more you know about your niche, the more you know about your sector, the better you can close clients, okay? When you have all the answers to all the questions, your clients will be unbelievably impressed with your knowledge, with your skill set, okay? Not only can you deliver a significantly higher quality of work if you know all the ins and outs of your industry, of your sector, of your niche, you can also rest assured that a client is going to pick you over another agency if you can answer every question that they have with full confidence, okay? So thorough knowledge comes from training, it comes from education. And what I can tell you factually from all the sales meetings I've been in myself, from all the sales meetings I've coached clients through, when they are sitting there and they can deliver confidence to the prospect that they are looking at, that prospect is an awful lot more likely to say, yes, you're the person that I want to work with, okay? if somebody asks you a question, you're like, oh, well, not too sure, or, maybe I could look into that after the call, but it's not really what I want to talk about now. Okay. Any of this kind of behavior will deter a prospective client. So if you're confident, you're educated, you're well-trained, you will arm yourself to close clients in a much more efficient machine-like manner. Okay. So once again, gaining thorough knowledge may allow you to make better offers to your prospective clients and deliver a higher quality of work. The more you know, the more specific you can get with your offer. Maybe there's an opportunity for additional bolt-on work. Maybe you're building them a website, but then you realize that actually often in their industry or in their niche, there's always a demand for SEO and paid ads. So you can pop that in there as well. All right. It's more money, not because you did anything differently, simply because you knew more. All right. So please take a moment, jot down any notes that you need to take, and do ask away with any questions. I've seen one pop in a little while ago, so I'll get to that at the end. Thank you very much indeed. And we have one final topic to go. So I'm going to leave you to take down notes for a few minutes. A few seconds, and then I will be right back with you. All righty, and a very warm welcome back to this webinar. Okay, so moving now on to third and final topic of the day. All right, so quick reminder, you're more than welcome to ask any questions related to business, marketing, digital marketing, the webinar itself. Please don't be shy, please ask away. Okay, third and final topic we're talking about today, making decisions with insufficient information. Okay, making decisions without the relevant and sufficient information can do the following. All right, now the title, the term is self-explanatory. Okay, would you ever make a decision with insufficient information? Okay, now if I'm asking you this in plain terms, it's probably not something you would do. If something was important enough, you would give it plenty of thought, plenty of time, and plenty of analysis. Okay, so making decisions without the relevant and sufficient information can have a direct and negative financial impact. Okay, especially with something like paid advertising. All right, so when we're talking about direct and indirect negative impacts, okay, paid advertising just so happens to be a direct negative impact. Okay, you make a decision without the relevant and sufficient information. Okay, let's just say that you put £10,000 once again into a paid advertising campaign, but you don't really know who to point the campaign at. You just do it. Okay, now why is this going to have a negative financial impact? Okay, and more so, I suppose, how is it direct? Okay, so let me cover this with you. It's direct because it's going to take the money directly out of your bank account. Okay, it's negative because what's happening is you are advertising, but you are getting no ROI. Okay, ROI stands for return on investment. Now, often with advertising, if it's done correctly, the whole purpose is that you earn more than what you spend. Okay, so let's say you spend 100 and you get £1,000 back. If I told you you could do that, you would do that time and time and time again. Okay, if done correctly, that's how advertising should work. Now, you build a campaign, you point it at the wrong audience, you're going to get 0 conversions for your £10,000. That is the cleanest example that I have for you, that a direct negative impact can affect your business, especially with your finances. Okay, if you're putting money into something, but you haven't given it the relevant thought and you haven't given it sufficient information, that's what's going to happen. Okay, it can also give you the incorrect stance on things. Okay, such as sales meetings, for example, offering the wrong type of service. Okay, now let's say that you're meeting with a client and you don't, or sorry, a prospective client at this point, and you haven't taken the time to look at what sort of things they offer as a business, learn their names or learn the kind of partnerships or anything relevant that you would need to know before going on to the sales meeting. You could take an incorrect stance. Okay, so maybe something that would be better suited to this prospective client would be refining their website and building a landing page. Instead, because we haven't done the analysis and we haven't gathered the sufficient information, we then offer her or him something like paid advertising. Okay, now what's happening in this scenario is that you have offered them completely the wrong thing, and they perhaps would have worked with you if you had made the right offer. But because we haven't gathered the sufficient information, we have indeed either upset them because we don't know that, so they don't believe that we were listening to them properly, or we have made them the incorrect offer, therefore it's just a simple no-brainer for them to say no, or any number of things. I could go on, but I shall not, okay? So with the incorrect stance here, we need to make sure that when we are positioned correctly, we need to make sure that we are armed with the correct and sufficient information so that when they do tell us things, we know how to respond, okay? Now, we're in the wonderful and fortunate position that you have not made any of these mistakes yet, and you don't need to, which is exactly why you're on this webinar today, and it's so valuable to know, okay? So making decisions without the relevant and sufficient information can give you the incorrect stance on things such as sales meetings, okay? This is so important. I cannot emphasize this enough, that when you attend the sales meeting, learn everything you can about the person that you're sitting down with, so that when it comes to what do you do, it's a question you're going to get, what do you do? Or how can you do it for me? Or how can we work together? You can say, actually, before the call, I was thinking that website development would be a good fit for you. However, having heard what you had to say and having looked at your business, I actually think we could have a bit more success if we were to launch a Facebook campaign. Okay, it gives you so much more control of the situation. Now, the major risk that you would run if making a decision without enough information would be disrupting your prospective or current client base, okay? We put this point in again so that we can run it home that this is absolutely crucial, okay? The biggest risk that you run when making a decision without enough information will be disrupting your prospective or current client base. Why? Because without clients, without customers, businesses don't exist, okay? Every business needs an outlet that provides financial income, okay? If we do not have this, we do not have a business, okay? That's why it's a major risk. Now, make sure that before any major decision, especially financial, okay, especially financial, that you gain all the facts, okay? So if there's one point that we can leave you with today, it will be this one. Make sure that before any major decision is made, especially financial, gain all the facts, okay? Understand everything that you can. Make sure that whenever you're about to commit to something, you have done the analysis and you make sure that it's a good idea for you and for your business. Okay, so I'm going to give you a brief moment to jot down any notes. Please go ahead and we will dive onto a recap in a very, very short moment. Okay, perfect. So to recap on today's presentation, number one foot at a time. Okay, we go back to the example that we use about the pool. You're standing at the side of the pool. If you dive in with 2 feet, you have removed the opportunity to make any kind of decision or educated approximation. Okay, 1 foot at a time. Use the theory, test the water first. Number two, avoid unnecessary mistakes. Prioritize education. Okay, it's so simple, so straightforward. Make sure that you've done your training. Make sure that you have the sufficient education to do what you need to do. Okay, prioritizing education will not ever eliminate every single possible mistake, but it will certainly reduce them, okay? And it will certainly avoid unnecessary mistakes being the key word here, okay? And finally, gather all the facts, make sure that you have all the information, and then decide your best approach, okay? So if you're in a client meeting, learn everything there is to know about them first, then make your decision on what service you will offer them. All right, so that now brings us to the end of the session. As always, a big, big thank you for attending. It's been an absolute pleasure presenting to you. Now, what we're going to do now is go into the Q&A session. Whilst we're doing this, if you would like to talk to a member of our team, you're more than welcome to head over to iob-business.com/talk-to-us. So the link is up here on the screen for you now. Go ahead and copy that link into your browser, and you can go ahead and book a call at a time that is suitable for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get the questions that I had from you lovely attendees today, and I will answer them. Okay, perfect. So great first question here. How much information is enough information for decision making? Okay, so it's a wonderful question and a broad question. Okay, so I'll answer it with a slightly more specific answer, and hopefully that will help. So my answer here, when you feel that you can take an educated and guided approach to a situation, such as a sales meeting, and you feel like you could maintain a reasonable conversation for a good length of time, okay? In simple terms, what I'm saying here is that it's near impossible to tell when enough information is ever enough, okay? But if I said to you, I want to talk to you about cars, and you know nothing about cars, I would say that you were not well armed to have that conversation. If, however, you'd studied cars for a few years, maybe you worked as a mechanic for a while, something that you enjoyed, something that you like to read magazines about, watch movies about, then I would say you have enough information to entertain the conversation about cars with me. Okay, so make sure that you have sufficient relevant information, that you're up to date, especially in a digital world. What you find is it adapts and changes all the time. Okay, so make sure that you stay up to date. If you're a digital agency leader, one of the things a leader does is make sure that they're ahead of the curve. All right, so you are reading newsletters on digital updates, you're training yourself on new advertising methods, whatever it is that you do, but make sure you're up to date. Okay, fantastic question. I hope that answer helps. Okay, so we have another question here, potentially a reiteration of something that we covered earlier, but I'm more than happy to cover it again because it is a very, very good question. Okay, so the question is, why would lack of education have negative financial impact? Okay, so once again, the most obvious example I can give for this, okay, the question once again, for those of you that might not have heard it, why would lack of education have negative financial impact? Okay, so an obvious example here, okay, you invest large amounts of funds. Now we use the example of £10,000, okay? Large amount of money into a paid advertising campaign, okay? Now what's happened is because you've dove in with 2 feet and you don't have enough education to run this campaign properly, you're going to get nothing in return for this £10,000, okay? There is no return on income, no return on investment because you have not set up the campaign correctly, okay? It's a mistake that could be avoided. Therefore, we would term that as an unnecessary mistake. All right, so once again, that's how lack of education can have a negative impact, because if we do not learn how to do things properly or how to answer questions properly or all the kind of examples you could use before we do it, we then run the risk of doing it incorrectly. And that can impact us negatively with our credibility, with our reputation, with the respect that we have from our clients, prospective clients, and worst of all, it could impact us severely and financially. All right, so wonderful, wonderful question. I'm just going to go ahead and check if we have any more. Okay, great. So it looks like we are all clear. No more questions for today. All righty, perfect. So once again, a very, very, very big thank you for taking the time to join us today. We hope that you enjoyed the content. We also hope that you have a lovely festive period and all the very best for the new year. And we very much look forward to speaking to you again then. Take care and bye for now.